Picture walking through a mist-covered forest at dawn, where the air hangs thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The sound of water dripping from fern-frond edges mingles with an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant call of a lone owl. Imagine the way the mist twists and curls around ancient oaks, as if the forest itself holds its breath, waiting. In these moments long ago, people believed the world was not just theirs. It was shared with beings so strange, so elusive, that they edged the boundary between reality and dreams. These were no mere ghosts or spirits, but creatures woven into the very fabric of the landscape, guardians of hidden knowledge and secrets lost to time. They filled villages with whispers, shaped the behaviors of travelers, and were the subject of cautionary tales told by flickering candlelight. And yet, here's the paradox. These beings once thrived in the collective imagination, and now, in our brightly lit modern world, the common refrain is that they don't exist at all. So, what were they really? Why did so many cultures believe, and yet now, erase them from daily thought? What if I told you that the creatures we dismiss as myth were neither figments of fancy, nor mere allegories, but living symbols of something deeply human and urgently lost? Today, we venture into the twisted myth that they don't exist, to uncover not just the creatures themselves, but the very essence of what they represented. We'll walk through enchanting stories, unmask old beliefs, and trace shadows that stretch into the modern world. Ready? Then lean closer, because what you're about to discover might just twist everything you thought you knew. Let's begin with a creature so bewildering that it defies all neat classification: the troll. Now, this might be the strangest thing about trolls. It isn't that they were giant, ugly monsters who lived under bridges, as popular culture has had us believe. No, the original trolls of Scandinavian folklore were much more ambiguous, and in fact, incredibly complex. They dwelled not only far beneath the earth, but also inside the thickest woods and misty mountains of medieval Norway and Sweden. Far from being mindless brutes, these trolls were guardians of wild, untamed nature, the custodians of ancient landscapes that were dangerous, sacred, and utterly beyond human control. According to folklorists like Catharine Briggs and later scholars compiling Grimm's and Norwegian tales, trolls had the uncanny ability to shape-shift and blend seamlessly into the rocky, mossy environment. Imagine the sound of distant footsteps crunching over frost-covered needles, the shifting of stones echoing a low, guttural growl. These were protectors, but with a fierce temper, ready to punish those who dared disrespect the land. Folk stories warn of travelers who ignored ritual respect, leaving no offerings, or worse, hunting recklessly, and found themselves trapped forever in a troll's labyrinthine cave, or turned to stone by the morning sun, frozen as eternal warnings. One tale tells of a young hunter who ventured too deep into a dark valley and encountered a troll mother, her hair tangled with autumn leaves and her eyes gleaming like molten amber. "Leave an offering," she said with a voice like gravel sliding over stone. But the hunter, proud and impatient, refused. That night the forest whispered his name, but he was never seen again, his bones mingling with the roots beneath the trees. This should be no surprise when you realize that trolls were like ancient therapy sessions for human respect towards nature's power, a living reminder that the wild lands were not playgrounds for humanity, but realms of unpredictable spirits. In 12th century Norway, these stories functioned as more than entertainment. They were environmental cautionary tales, nature's version of security cameras. Villagers who lived on the edge of forests and mountains used these myths to maintain a fragile balance. How to coexist without provoking the forces they did not understand. But there's more to this story. The trolls were also seen as the medieval social workers of their time, enforcing community ethics through fear but also wisdom. They symbolized consequences for greed, hubris, and disrespect, particularly in times when laws were weak and personal codes held greater sway. The trolls were not just monsters, they were mirrors, reflecting human failings back with a cruel twist. Yet beneath this fearsome exterior lay a bittersweet truth. The trolls were deeply tied to the earth's rhythms, the changing of seasons, the fertility of the soil, the mystery of life cycles. This reveals something deeper about how ancient people perceived their environment. It was alive with will and intent, a network of relationships rather than mere resources. Comparing that to today's environmental activism, It's striking how modern ecological movements echo what these stories articulated centuries ago. If only we could hear their stories again, perhaps we'd remember to live with the land, not against it. As the sun rises and the mist fades, so too did belief in trolls wane under the harsh light of scientific progress and urban expansion. The wild landscapes they inhabited were cut down, tamed, mapped, and cataloged until there was no room left for such beings to roam freely, even in imagination. These creatures became mere fairy tale fodder, their complex meanings reduced to caricature. But the stories tell us something else. They warn us that in losing these myths, we lose our intimate connection with the places that gave us life. From this tangled forest of trolls, our journey takes a turn into the shadowed realms of another enigmatic figure, the will-o'-the-wisp. Picture a moonlit marsh in medieval England, the blanket of fog rolling in over knee-high reeds, the damp chill nestled deep in your bones. Suddenly, a flickering blue light dances just beyond reach, gleaming like a restless spirit trapped between worlds. Villagers called it by many names: jack-o'-lantern, friar's lantern, or the ghostly flicker of the devil himself. But what if I told you the will-o'-the-wisp was not a devilish trick, or simply a phenomenon of natural gas igniting in the swamp, but a symbol alive with layered human meanings? In the oldie world, this light represented the soul's wanderings, a beacon for the lost, but also a warning of deception and illusion. Often described in folktales collected by folklorists such as Mr. James and Joseph Jacobs, these floating fires led travelers astray, deeper into treacherous bogs where even the most seasoned could lose their way. Imagine the sound of sucking mud around your boots, the whisper of dark water slick with ancient peat beneath, the faint glow shimmering like a heartbeat in the night. This was nature's riddle, a test of vigilance and wisdom. Folklorists note that these lights functioned like ancient therapy sessions for the human psyche, embodying the fear and wonder of the unknown. In a time when getting lost meant death, these stories offered lessons on trust, skill, and humility, reminding people that not everything shining is gold or guide. The will-o'-the-wisp symbolized both hope and danger, illuminating the thin line between knowledge and folly. Villagers would tell tales of old Tim, a local woodsman, who saw the flames one night and chased them, laughing. He disappeared, found days later empty-eyed and rambling about the eyes of the marsh. Why did belief in these lights fade? Because as towns grew bright with gas lamps and streetlights pierced the darkness, the wild, mysterious marshes retreated into folklore. Scientific explanations offered solace but stripped away the soul of the tale, turning the enchanted into the explainable. Yet there remains something haunting in these stories, a metaphor for the illusions we chase, the flickers of hope or danger that light our path in life's dark swamps. Like a lighthouse guiding, or misleading ships, the will-o'-the-wisp's myth is a reminder we once saw the world as alive with signs, where every flicker of light might be a message from the beyond, or a projection of our own fears and dreams. Today, these tales resonate with psychological realities, symbolizing the precarious nature of hope, the manipulations of perception, and the universal temptation to follow what merely glitters. But the will-o'-the-wisp was more than just a cautionary flicker in the dark. It was a bridge between the known and the unknown, marking thresholds where the world of the spirit and the world of the waking overlapped. The marshes were liminal spaces, places our ancestors feared yet revered, like ancient therapy sessions where the soul confronted its deepest fears. And so, from the shadowy trolls hidden in Scandinavian forests to the flickering lights of English marshes, we see a pattern emerging. These creatures, these myths, were not simply imaginary. They were living stories infused with lessons, fears, and values. They were ancient ways of understanding what we now call psychology, ecology, and ethics, wrapped in enchanting narratives to make the harsh realities of life bearable and meaningful. But there is still more we need to uncover. These stories, once common currency in human societies, carry hidden keys to understanding how we viewed ourselves and the world around us. And crucially, the reasons why we stopped believing in them tell us a lot about the transformations our societies underwent. How science, modernity, urbanization, and rationalism reshaped not only landscapes, but imaginations too. Before we explore the fading of these myths and what that means for us today, let me share with you a full story. The tale of a creature that embodies the very heart of the twisted myth itself. the elusive and often misunderstood pukwudgie from the folklore of the Wampanoag people of northeastern America. Imagine the mist curling over the thick pine forests of Massachusetts, the underbrush tangled and alive with the rustling of unseen feet. A young Wampanoag boy named Nathan had been warned not to wander beyond the village edge at dusk, where the pukwudgies, small, trickster-like beings, were said to play their pranks. But curiosity, as ever, pulled him like a tide. One evening, as the sky bled orange into twilight, Nathan caught a glimpse of a figure no taller than a rabbit, yet strangely human in face and hands, with glowing eyes like embers from the campfire. The pukwudgie beckoned him silently, and the boy followed, moving deeper into the forest's embrace. Suddenly, the creature vanished, replaced by a sudden chill and a whisper that sounded like the wind twisting through dry leaves. "You seek what should not be found," the voice echoed. "Leave now or be lost forever." Nathan turned, heart pounding, and sprinted as shadows skewed and twisted behind him. When he returned, the village elders listened dimly to his tale, nodding gravely. The pukwudgie were not merely pranksters. They were guardians of balance, punishing those who disturbed sacred spaces or disrespected the earth's spirits. These beings were a living testament of indigenous knowledge, reminding the people that the forest was alive, sentient, and aware of human deeds. This traditional story, collected by Native American storytellers and shared in oral histories, reveals what these myths really convey: not just fear, but respect, reciprocity, and a deep environmental ethic. Pukwudgies were like the original environmental activists, enforcing natural law through mythic authority. Their presence kept communities mindful of their impact on the land. Yet, as colonization advanced and indigenous voices were silenced or dismissed, such stories were labeled superstitions, marginalized, and forgotten in mainstream narratives. The dismissal of the pukwudgie myth is emblematic of a broader loss: the loss of ancestral connections to place, and the layered wisdom these myths carried. As we continue this journey, we'll not only reveal the origins and lessons of these twisted myths, but also explore what it means for us today to reclaim their magic. Because these stories, far from being relics of a naive past, are alive with meaning, offering us keys to navigate the complexities of modern life. If only we dare to listen. Stay with me, because the next part will open the gates to myths you thought were long gone, and invite you to see the forgotten worlds flickering behind the veil of logic and reason. The creatures that don't exist might just be waiting, not outside in some far forest, but inside the very stories we have stopped telling. Now, as the forest's shadows deepen and the mist thickens once again, let us turn our eyes to a creature just as enigmatic as the troll or the will-o'-the-wisp, but one whose presence is shrouded in an even thicker fog of mystery and cultural misinterpretation: the chupacabra. Emerging from the arid landscapes of Puerto Rico and spreading through Latin America in the late 20th century, the chupacabra is a creature surrounded by fear, speculation, and myth. Yet this might be the strangest thing about the chupacabra. It isn't some ancient, primal beast that has haunted the jungles for centuries. Rather, it is a modern myth born out of a specific moment of social anxiety, ecological disruption, and cultural change. In the early 1990s, reports began to surface of a strange beast attacking livestock, particularly goats, leaving behind mysterious puncture wounds and drained of blood. The creature was variously described as a reptilian, alien, or dog-like monster, an embodiment of dread woven into the fabric of rapidly changing rural landscapes. But what do these tales really represent? Anthropologists and folklorists studying these accounts suggest the chupacabra is less a creature of flesh and blood, and more a symbol of collective fear about environmental degradation, economic instability, and the loss of traditional ways of life. It is like a mirror reflecting the anxieties of communities witnessing the decline of their natural world and the unpredictability brought by modernity. Consider this: the chupacabra myth emerged at a time when industrial farming, habitat loss, and pesticide use were dramatically transforming Latin American ecosystems. In this context, the beast becomes more than a monster. It is nature's warning cry, a ghostly emblem of disruption. Just as the trolls guarded ancient forests, the chupacabra represents a new boundary: the fragile line between humans and a wounded environment, increasingly difficult to control or understand. The modern fascination with this creature, fueled by tabloid sensationalism and internet rumors, stripped away the myth's deeper social commentary, reducing it to a caricature of horror. But the original tales, when viewed through a cultural lens, reveal an ancient impulse to give expression to unseen losses and uneasy futures. Much like ancient therapy sessions, where communities collectively process trauma through story. From the blazing sun-baked plains of Puerto Rico, our journey leads us northward to the frosted fields of Scotland, where another creature quietly lingers in the shadows of folklore, the Kelpie. Unlike the Chupacabra's distinctly modern birth, the Kelpie has roots that dive deep into Celtic waters dating back over 1,000 years, chronicled in the annals of Scottish mythology and early Christian texts alike. The Kelpie is a shape-shifting water spirit, often described as a beautiful horse rising from lochs and rivers, enticing unwary children or travelers to their watery doom. Here's the twist. The Kelpie is not simply a malevolent beast, but a complex symbol of water's dual nature, vital yet dangerous, life-giving yet capable of destruction. Imagine standing by a misty loch at twilight, the scent of wet heather in the air, and the soft rippling sounds of water caressing the stones. There the Kelpie waits, both a guardian and an executioner. These stories, preserved in collections by folklorists like the Gaelic scholar John Gregorson Campbell, served as cautionary tales, much like the troll's warnings, teaching respect for the power and unpredictability of the natural world. But there's more to this story. The Kelpie represents not simply fear of drowning, but a collective human reckoning with loss. The loss of loved ones swept away by the water and the subtler loss of control over elemental forces. In a time before scientific explanations of currents and tides, the Kelpie was nature's way of symbolizing the inherent dangers of the environment. Much like medieval social workers, these myths maintained social order, advising care and respect for boundaries shaped by nature and tradition. In today's world, the Kelpie's myth hangs on the edge of fading memory, replaced by safety signs and scientific reasoning. Yet, what these ancient tales really reveal is a deep psychological truth. Water is both cradle and grave, and the Kelpie myth encodes our ambivalent relationship with it. At once a source of sustenance and peril, the myth persists as a poetic reminder of the fragile balance we once honored and have since forgotten. Transitioning from the swirling waters of the Scottish lochs, we find ourselves in the arid deserts of Australia, where the Aboriginal peoples tell stories of the Bunyip, a creature born from the dark, still waters of isolated billabongs and waterholes. The Bunyip, often described as a mysterious water-dwelling monster with shape-shifting abilities, embodies both fear and sacredness in Aboriginal lore. But what is truly fascinating about the Bunyip is that it is not merely a monster lurking in the shadows. It is a profound teacher of community values, an ancient enforcer of social and ecological codes. According to scholars like A.W. Reid and accounts gathered from Aboriginal elders, the Bunyip maintained boundaries, not only physical, by protecting water sources, but moral, by cautioning against disrespect or dangers near these vital places. Imagine the sharp cries of nocturnal birds, the heavy stillness broken only by insects buzzing near stagnant pools at dusk. It is here the Bunyip may rise, reminding listeners that the land and water are living entities demanding reverence. This should be no surprise when you realize the Bunyip myth reflects an ecological understanding embedded in Aboriginal cultures, an awareness that waterholes in the unforgiving desert are lifelines for survival, sacred and not to be profaned by carelessness. The Bunyip stories acted as nature's version of security cameras, ancient surveillance ensuring the fragile ecosystems were treated with caution and respect. Yet beneath this protective role lay more human complexities. The Bunyip could also be a symbol of the unknown fears of outsiders encroaching on Aboriginal lands, a mythological bulwark against cultural erasure and ecological exploitation. As European colonization displaced indigenous people and altered the landscape, the Bunyip became a silent witness to loss of lands, languages, and lives. The myth's fading presence in modern Australian culture signals a deeper alienation from ancestral connections and ecological wisdom. From the burning red sands of Australia, let us now reel back northwards to the icy realms of Siberia, where the Almas stalk the wild Caucasian mountains and taiga forests. The Almas, known in local folklore as wild, hairy humanoids, share traits with Yetis and Bigfoot legends around the world. But this might be the strangest thing about the Almas. These beings are not just cryptids or entertainment fodder. They are cultural symbols deeply intertwined with the survival and identity of indigenous peoples like the Yakut and the Tuvans. Folklorists have documented Alma's legends collected by Russian explorers and anthropologists in the 19th and early 20th centuries, describing these creatures as elusive intermediary beings, neither fully wild animals nor entirely human. The Almas were thought to inhabit the wildest, most inaccessible places, embodying a living connection to the primal world that humans once belonged to. Imagine the cold whisper of wind across snow-dusted pine boughs, the crunch of frozen earth beneath heavy boots, and the sudden impression of eyes watching from the shadows. The Alma's myth functioned as both a bridge and a boundary. It told of a world beyond human civilization, pressing against the edges of human experience, while reminding communities of their place within a broader natural order. Like ancient therapy sessions, these stories help people process the tension between their desire to explore and the necessity to respect untamed wilderness. However, the Almas also symbolize the gradual erasure of wildness itself. As Soviet industrialization, deforestation, and modernization encroached upon sacred homelands, pushing these legends to the fringe of belief. What these tales really reveal is not merely the existence of a cryptid, but the human need to imagine the wilderness as alive with mystery and agency, a necessity increasingly lost in the age of technology and urban sprawl. And yet, as all these myths drift into the shadows cast by modern life, a question pulses beneath. Why have we collectively stopped believing? The answer is tangled in the roots of scientific rationalism and colonialism, progress and modernization, forces that redefine the world in terms of data, exploitation, and control, displacing ancient modes of thought. We've traded rich, emblematic stories for charts, statistics, and the cold, bright glow of artificial lights. But in doing so, we have also lost something precious: the layered connection between humans and the wild, the stories as tools of survival, wisdom, and ethical restraint. These myths were much more than fanciful tales. They were ancient compasses guiding human behavior, psychological anchors for fear and hope, and communal enforcers of respect for the fragile ecosystems that sustained life. Consider the closing tale of a creature that perhaps best encapsulates this lost magic: the Yuki-onna, the snow woman of Japanese folklore. In the long, bitter winters of northern Japan, when the snow falls thick and silent over cedar forests and frozen lakes, villagers whispered of the Yuki-onna, a spectral woman clad in white, appearing suddenly amid snowdrifts with eyes cold and unblinking. She was both beautiful and terrifying, her breath a frost that could freeze souls, her presence both a warning and a lament. One such story, told in Lafcadio Hearn's classic collections, tells of Minakichi, a young woodcutter caught in a blizzard who encounters the Yuki-onna. She spares his life, warning him never to speak of her, yet he breaks his promise, and the consequences ripple like winter frost over his family and village. The tale is a haunting meditation on human frailty, promises, and the intersection of life and death. But the Yuki-onna is more than a spirit of winter. She symbolizes the overwhelming power of nature and the fragile thread that binds humans to the cycles of life and death. She is nature's enforcer of balance, an icy reminder that respect for forces beyond our control is not optional. The Yuki-onna myth, like so many others, reflects a worldview where human actions have profound repercussions, and where stories serve to maintain harmony through fear and wonder. As Japan modernized and winter became less deadly due to technology, these stories shifted from literal warnings to poetic symbols, their original weight diluted but their core messages still deeply resonant. The Yuki-onna reminds us that the line between myth and reality is thin, and often, the real monsters are the lessons we refuse to heed. So what does this all mean for us now, standing at the crossroads of ancient myth and modern hyperreality? These creatures, the trolls, will-o'-the-wisps, pukwudgies, chupacabras, kelpies, bunyips, almas, and Yuki-onnas, are not just forgotten fairy tales. They are echoes of a time when humans lived woven into a world alive with mystery, where the wild was not conquered but feared, revered, and understood as a complex partner in life's dance. By dismissing them as mere superstition, We have severed ties to the ethical frameworks and psychological insights embedded within these stories. They were nature's tools, ancient therapy sessions addressing sky-high fears, ironclad social contracts enforced by mythic authority, and the original environmental activism encoded in narrative form. To reclaim their magic is not simply to believe in monsters, but to remember how to live in a world that still, beneath the noise of progress, pulses with unseen forces. It is to listen to the whispers in the mist again, to honor boundaries without fences, to see that the landscapes around us are neighbors, not resources to be consumed. Tonight, as you reflect on these twisted myths, ask yourself what stories you carry that connect you to the world beyond the human. What forgotten shadows flicker just on the edge of your sight? And perhaps consider, how might we weave these ancient threads back into our lives, to heal not only the earth but ourselves? Because these creatures, these myths, though said not to exist, live on, not outside in some distant, forgotten forest or dark pond, but inside the very stories we've stopped telling. And in their survival rests a secret, that the boundary between legend and reality is a thread, and that thread is woven from the human heart itself. So before the mist fully fades and the silence resumes, dare to remember. Dare to step lightly upon the land, with eyes wide open to the stories whispered by wind and water. In doing so, you become part of an ancient, ongoing tale, one where respect, mystery, and wonder are the true guardians of existence. Because maybe, just maybe, they never truly disappeared. They were waiting for us all along.